Creating On the Verge was really a process of passion for me. It was a story that's so near and dear to my heart, having grown up and lived with very similar things going on in my life. I became a filmmaker almost by accident. I've been a hobbyist photographer for most of my adult life. I just really love, taking images of the spaces I explore in the wilderness and sharing them and just documenting my adventures. I was shooting a trip with some friends that were some snowboarders, some backcountry snowboarders, and taking photos for them, and I started shooting some video on the side just for the fun of it, and they really liked it, and I found that I really enjoyed combining the visuals with sound and storytelling and motion. It just kind of snowballed, and over the course of a couple years I started doing more and more, and people started approaching me to do video projects, and I just really fell in love with the medium. I think it really gives you a much better opportunity to connect with people and tell a specific story than I was capable of with photography. The documentary really started to take shape when I went to Powell River to actually shoot some mountain biking in the backcountry right near where we shot a lot of the rock climbing. I did several trips out there into this beautiful, beautiful granite area up on these mountain ridge lines. I had some of the climbing community reach out to me and ask if I would be willing to come shoot some of the climbing and help showcase just the other activities that are going on there. This was a really complicated story to try to tell because, there's elements of the industrial abuse and loss of our old growth forests here in BC. There's elements of personal loss and personal story and investment in places. There's colonial heritage of the forestry industry and how we think about and treat wild spaces. There's themes of legacy and what our heritage is from an industrial standpoint. So the biggest challenge for this film for me was really figuring out what to put in it and what to exclude. And at the end of the day, the hardest decision I had to make was actually to focus this story down on just the rock climbers and their experience and their relationship with this area. When I met the climbing community and heard their stories and really got a good understanding of their relationships with the forestry industry, this really became clear that this was a perfect opportunity to share the stories that I had been living with my whole life as well, right? Matt being a carpenter, using wood for his hobby and his work, his profession. Rob being a forester, he spent years of his life cutting down these forests that he now is watching disappear. Christy works at the mill in town. Everyone had a really important professional and personal relationship with these forests. And it was obvious to me that there's a story here to show people how complex conservation efforts can be and how complex people's relationships with wild spaces can be. The process of making a film like this is probably a lot less glorious than a lot of people would think it might be. It involves a lot of getting up before sunrise with your headlamp on in the rain, packing gear up under tarps and rain covers, and hiking alone out into the wilderness to start setting up shots that you'll need to do when it's light out. And then people show up and you'll do some shooting and they'll go down and start making dinner and have a beer and go for a swim, and then you're left there alone to start packing up gear and carrying load after load after load back down the mountainside to camp. And then you get back to camp by headlamp after it's already dark out and unload your gear and go start backing up all of your footage until 2 in the morning, and then you sleep for a couple hours and start it all over again. So there's a lot of climbing up and down ropes endlessly, just carrying heavy backpacks and duffel bags of gear to get between point A and point B to actually shoot something like this. It's a very different experience than filming anything else I've ever shot. When you're spending an entire day on a vertical surface, when you have to do things like change batteries or change a lens or, grab a bar to eat because you're hungry, everything becomes a process of discipline and slow focus because you can't take your backpack off and set it on the ground and open it up and pull things out, right? You have to anchor it to the wall. You have to carefully open everything to make sure that you don't drop a 2-pound lens 40 feet down onto a rock climber. And so every action you do, every motion you make has to be very carefully monitored and very carefully controlled. And and everything has to be attached to you. You know, I'm wearing a tether with my camera clipped to me, and everything I take out is done in a way that if I let go of it, it's not going to hurt someone down below me. The very process of getting into position and getting equipment staged to get ready to shoot is such a slow, ponderous activity. And then even the shooting itself, everything is slow, careful, diligent, focused movements to make sure nothing gets dropped and nothing gets lost. And knock on wood, the only thing I ever dropped was actually an eye cup from from my camera, you know, and so I think I got through it pretty unscathed. One of the things about this region that kept catching me off guard, and I was warned about it too, is what's called foreshortening. And foreshortening is when you're standing in the bottom of a valley. There are these glacial carved valleys, they're kind of U-shaped. And so what happens is when you're standing at the bottom, looking at a rock wall, you look at it on an angle. So the rock wall doesn't actually look that big when you're staring at it from the floor of the valley. But as you start to go up the wall and it gets steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper, you see the valley start to open up below you. So this idea of foreshortening is you're looking at a rock wall and you're saying, it doesn't really look that big. You know, I've looked at much bigger walls. And as you start progressing up these walls, you just realize the scale of some of these cliffs. These are incredibly big granite walls, many of which have never been climbed or been climbed by only a few people. That always took my breath away. Every time I got in a wall, it just, you have the scale of this region and these rock climbing areas just recontextualized for you every time, and it never ceases to amaze me. Shooting climbing for film, it's not like just going and doing a rock climb, right? Because you have to set up ropes, you have to get gear into place, you have to pull ropes up so they're not in your shots, and then you have to shoot the climbers climbing the pitch that you're trying to film. As someone that's in front of the camera, the climbers just had to have so much understanding and tolerance and patience to just spend hours sitting around, waiting, doing nothing, not climbing the rocks they're there to climb, just waiting for me to get in place and get all our equipment organized. So behind the curtain of a documentary like this, it's very slow and very ponderous and very dedicated. I think it's important for people to understand that very often these issues are not black and white. There's an end goal that we want to get to, something like preserving an area or stopping the harvest of old growth forests. But at the end of the day, to get from point A to point B, it can be a very messy process. And I think we have to be empathetic to the people involved in that process and how they see that transition happening. And if nothing else, just giving a platform for their voices to say, this is complex and let's be careful and let's do this in a conscientious way for everyone. I've had people come up and tell me they felt inspired to pay attention to what's going on in their backyards. I've had people come up and tell me that they're foresters working in their communities. And it always upsets them that no one really shows how complicated the relationship can be between an industry like the forestry industry and recreationists and conservationists. And very often we see people that work in resource extraction industries like forestry as the bad guys or the other side. And I've had people tell me how much it meant to have someone show how complicated it is and how, they're often one and the same. Recreationists are often the ones that work in these industries. I want to inspire people to start lines of dialogue. And I also really want to highlight the value of building a personal relationship with wild spaces outside your back door so you can care about them and so you can fight for them and build a more fulfilled life for yourself through that process. To me, the biggest honor has been to be able to share Christy and Matt and the rest of the climbing community's story and to have the opportunity to be welcomed into their lives and share it more broadly with the world and show them that, even if you don't think you really have a story to tell, if you're just doing your thing, if you're just living your life and doing the best you can in the best way you think possible, there's importance to that. There's a value to that you might not necessarily understand just doing what you do. So to me, it's been a huge honor to be welcomed into their lives and to have people across the world be impacted by this film. That's by far been the biggest reward, and I couldn't ask for anything more than that.